Recording. Yeah. What is up? Welcome to the podcast. A very exciting guest. You know him, hilarious comedian, arguably the funniest improviser on the planet. You know him from TV, film, a writer. He's on the show Avenue 5, which films in London, so who knows when he's doing that again. Uh, from Silicon Valley, Mrs. Fletcher. Basically, this guy's the Tony Soprano, the new Tony Soprano of HBO. And
Mhm.
playing, actually, right now, he's playing the most important role of all, father. Uh, Neil Casey, welcome to the Dan Black Attack podcast.
Thank you, Dan. Happy to be here.
Don't
I'm
you love when
the only way I can have long form telephone conversations with my friends anymore is to jump on the podcast.
you gotta
Yeah.
zoom? If it's not recorded, I'm not interested in talking to you. Which
No.
is interesting. That is that is everything is content now, and it is a
I
really
know.
interesting dynamic. It's going
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. I'm speaking of playing the role of father. I'm just worried about falling into all the cliches.
Don't you hate like when actors do that? Like when they like it's always like only A-list actors are so out of touch will just be like, and I'm preparing for my most important role of all, motherhood.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're like, oh, all right, I get it. Yes, it's not, not to diminish being a parent. It's an incredible thing.
No. No. But it's
But it is,
easier. It's easier when you're cracking seven figures, I think.
yeah, yeah. Take 3 months off the film in Venezuela.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
just Skype with your kid.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
anyway, let's not be judging people. The Neil. So the reason I want to have you on the podcast is the second this pandemic. Okay, I know it might be controversial for some of my listeners to call this a pandemic. We got some real no. But, the second this coronavirus pandemic hit, I was thinking, I'm like, boom, Neil. I think of you right away. Not because you're a diseased man, but because I've known you a long time. We've performed together for a very long time at this point, and we've had our deeper conversations. And I would say you are, and I said this to you off recording because I wanted to run it by you. I'd say you have a vibe of being like I say like a non-conspiratorial, practical doomsday prepper. Not
Well,
like a guy who's not Howard Hughes style or whatever, which
yeah.
not neurotic in that way, but almost a place of like, hey, I don't take my freedoms for granted, and I don't think anything's guaranteed, right?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. I'm not a prepper though.
Right,
And I'm not particularly freaked out about this stuff, but at least from where I'm sitting, it seems perfectly obvious that a lot of bad stuff can happen over the
right,
course of a human life, and that a lot of the comforts and things you take completely for granted are more fragile than they seem. Even if it's just, the horrific stuff you see about like the fires in Southern California, like that Paradise Fire and stuff like that, where it's like,
right.
oh, one day I live in a beautiful 3-bedroom, craftsman cabin in the mountains, and the next thing I know, a fire truck is pushing my corpse off the road in the car that I died in.
Right,
Where it's
right,
like, it's horrible, truly horrible, but I don't know. Everybody thinks that all those things are sort of one-off aberrations, whereas it's like living in Florida, like with hurricanes. You see those devastating hurricanes every 10 to 15 years or things like that. It's just it seems obscenely naive to me to not have an eye towards the things that are relatively likely to happen in your lifetime that could really put a hurting on your family, your physical, could put a hurting on your pocketbook, fine, or
right,
could put a hurting on your body and that of people you love. So
right.
yeah, the pandemic has always been, I mean, I thought it would be a flu, but like I'm with the Bill Gates and those people who said, well, the real threat to modern civilization that we live in is another uncontrollable act of God, which would
Right.
be
It's
a
not
pandemic.
weapons.
Yeah, I mean, nuclear is pretty high. Nuclear
Yeah.
could be a cascading uh, comedy of errors with nuclear weapons could end things. That'd be pretty sad. But I mean, the idea of the sort of the humble virus coming in and really shaking things up has been pretty likely for a while, or at least, it's likely to happen in any given 100-year period. So,
Right.
what we make it 102 years since the last real one, I guess there was one in the 70s, and, the SARS thing we've had close calls,
Right.
the equivalent
Yeah.
of the World Trade Center basement bombings to this 9/11. But, this one really happened.
Well, also, we've been kind of lucky from what I was reading about Ebola. Ebola had never hit a major metropolis. And
it was so deadly.
Right.
It was so deadly that people didn't spread it, whereas this is so mild by comparison that it gets spread much wider. Yeah.
Right. Because Ebola, you transmit it when you're symptomatic. Right. So this is get asymptomatic spread of COVID-19 is the major problem we have here, among many other problems of government and whatnot. But I guess now we're moving into, I guess, whatever we'll call it. I don't want to call it phase 2 because and that's part of the whole problem is there's no post 9/11, right? They set up Homeland Security. I'm not even criticizing any of that, but they set up here's the colors. Remember? It's here's red, green, whatever. Now we could criticize if that worked at all, but there was a comfort in being there were times where literally the government 4 or 5 years after 9/11 were we're going to yellow.
Right. I remember. Yeah.
And not that meant literally anything. I have no idea.
Yeah.
But there was a nice. That feels like a time that I'm now fantasizing about, where there was some kind of unity within our government, where America felt like, hey, we are America, we're one, we pay all these taxes and blah 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 because we're the number one, we're the leaders of the world, right?
Yeah. And now the federal government has said we have no role in this. We'll point up at the WHO and blame them for misinformation, and then we'll point down at the governors and say that they have to get their act together. And it's but what is exactly your role in all of this? It's sort of we're just backing you guys up.
Yeah, exactly. I can't make heads or tails of the whole thing. I mean, I literally I'm a news junkie,
Yeah.
And I don't even know what that even means anymore, because that means I'm a guy who just gives these channels ratings because I gain nothing. I'm trying to just get basic information. So, and now I'm expanding out. I'm, reading more, reading The Guardian more and all, whatever foreign news sources I can get, because I just want to know basic information. I was on the WHO's website today. The point is that, now I'm now we're entering a phase 2 of sorts, right? Where we're opening back up. Some places are opening up, some are not. I wouldn't even call it a phase 2 because it feels we're still in phase 1 in LA.
Yeah, there's no plan. And the whole thing, the thing that's so aggravating about it is that we gave the whole point of having a lockdown, even if it comes a little late. I'm not trying to compare everybody to what they would have done if they were perfect or even smart. It's just even if you're just kind of muddling through, trying your best, the whole point of a big lockdown we're still living under is to give the government time to make all these masks, equip all the hospitals, and then roll out a comprehensive program of testing, both contagion testing and antibody testing. Do you have it now? Did you ever have it? And we did that. We gave them 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and they just didn't. So they just didn't do it. And it should have been a federal thing. It could have been a state thing. There's stuff that I think has been done well in California and Los Angeles County and city in particular. And there's other things that I think are bullshit or heavy-handed. But for the most part, given the benefit of the doubt that everybody's, doing it about as well as you could expect them to.
Right.
But there's no point to having a lockdown. There's no point to any of this if you're not going to roll out a comprehensive testing program so that you can, like you said, at whatever level of resolution you want to get, from neighborhood to neighborhood or from city, county, or even state, region more realistically, to have red zones, yellow zones, green zones, right? Where is it spreading?
Right.
what's happening, and the fact that we in 2 months don't have anything resembling that on a national scale is a failure of historical proportions. And then now, pathetically, even with this issue, even with a real sort of biological, non-political, non-social issue, this thing has been reduced to like another like left-right pro-Trump, anti-Trump, like Democrats do this, and
Yeah.
Democrats wear masks and Republicans don't, and all that stuff. And it's just the
Can you even believe it?
the chicken shit nature of that is just, it just makes you want, I don't know what it makes you want to, it makes you want to give up on the sort of American experiment for sure.
That's how I feel. Like I really legitimately am in this place where calling it the American experiment is almost the perfect way to put it, where you're like, is this over? Is this over that I have people in my family who think that the liberals are just as bad as what's going on at the federal government? And I'm just talking about, forget about the liberals. I don't even mean to say that. I mean, people who are not in power matter. Their behavior should be equated to people who actually have human lives in their hands currently. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I think it's like, I cannot believe smart people I know are posting, they're posting things about not wanting to take vaccines and stuff. And it's like, fine, let's talk about that later. Like, we're not even close to a vaccine. What happens right now? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
What do I do tomorrow? I mean, right now I'm literally holed up in here, not even sure if, like, what exactly we're going to do. The point is that I watched this movie Contagion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Have you seen this movie?
Yeah.
I thought it was excellent. It's a great movie. I recommend it, but if you're scared right now, don't watch it, because it's if COVID-19 was Ebola, essentially.
Yeah.
Right? Or even worse. But I was like, all right, I watched this movie. Okay, and I'm like, all right, whatever, it's just a movie. Then I talked to someone who knew the guy who like wrote the movie. I was in a conversation, and they're like, yeah, he researched his ass off to write this movie. And then I saw that those guys, Soderbergh and the writer, were on a panel, an actual pandemic panel, after they wrote the movie, talking about pandemics. And you're like, wow, this guy wrote, I learned more from this movie than listening to hours and hours of this president, vice president, every cable news channel across the board,
Yeah.
It's really insane.
Yeah, it's wild. And the guy who wrote it, I believe, in an article recently, I said, I'm paraphrasing, but he said something along the lines like, the only thing we didn't predict was a complete abdication of any responsibility by the federal government
at the presidential level.
Yeah,
because the movie actually it doesn't. You never see the president,
right?
And you're like, oh well, we didn't even. You would think, because it's crazy, because right now you would think Trump has an amazing opportunity right now, if he sees himself as this great dictator, to actually take a national role, take a stand.
And he doesn't want it. He just wants, he doesn't want it. He just wants the appearances and the attention. Like, yeah, it would be a perfect time for them to totally close the borders, like seriously close the borders, and to like do a Marshall Plan for manufacturing in this country, throw trillions of dollars at reopening factories.
New Deal, build that wall as part of the New Deal, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I like, to get everybody get their hands dirty on interstates, bridges, planting trees, bringing manufacturing back to the country. But the sad joke is that they're just not serious. They're not they're just not serious about anything. I mean, like, I don't think Trump is, I don't have the deep, like, the pearl clutching fear of him, because he's just always been a clown. Like, he's not a danger. He's not like a, he has authoritarian tendencies, certainly. And he, like, he does run he runs the White House like a Italian social club in Newark, but like he
just wants to
runs
go
it like
around
the
to
pork
every
store.
Yeah. He just wants to go around and just be like, hey, how's your meal?
Yeah, have people kiss the
ring.
ring.
A great singer coming up. Listen, I heard her sing. She's amazing. She's coming up in 10. Can I get you a round of drinks?
Yeah. And he and like, but I mean, I always compare him to. I think this may originally be a Tamanix observation, so I
Right.
don't want to take it from him. But he's just Chauncey Gardner. Like Trump
Right.
is just sort of like he just stumbles into things and just acts the way he acts in whatever room he's in. But there's no overarching plan. It's a moment to moment thing of how much approval am I getting from the people in the room and from the TV that I watch later.
Right.
He's Chauncey Gardner. That's it. It's being there. So yeah, I'm not worried that he would consult. I'm worried a little bit about the people around him, the same way I was with like Cheney and Bush and all that stuff. Like there is a sort of, there is sort of a shadow elite of like Republican,
Yeah, it's like the Bannons,
the people who
Roger
practice
Stones.
the dark arts. Yeah.
Like the McMahon family, like shit like that.
Yeah. And I worry somewhat about, but I just think he's so capricious and unreliable that he's actually kind of a backstop against those people, because like he just has no follow through on anything. Like he has absolutely no, like, he barks stuff out on Twitter. Like, I'm ordering the Ford Motor Company, or was it Ford? I forget. Yeah. I'm ordering under the Defense Production Acts that they make masks. And then it's like, was that an order? It's like, well, he didn't actually sign anything. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. Do we do can you do an order over Twitter? And like lawyers are like, I don't think so. So then just nothing happens and nobody does it, you know?
Well, it's just, that's the crazy thing about Trump is I think you nailed it. It's like, I actually have weirdly, like, I have a fear of him as being the president just because of that level of like incompetence and the fact that he doesn't care. But like he has no sort of like Hitler game plan or anything like people think, because he's proving it right now is that all he wants is just the title, right? Like he just wants to be the president, be adored, and that's it. But he doesn't want to do anything because he's he has no ideals, right? He's got no ideology. Like it's so there's almost a thing that calms me down weirdly. But then the thing that gets me worked up is how people could legitimately believe that he's doing anything good. I mean, like this is like a mess. This is an absolute mess.
Yeah, this is by any standard an absolute mess. But it just shows how little anybody expects. Like if you run on, if you're on the right and you're running on the platform of government can't get anything done and everything's, like your taxpayer money is just being wasted and every government program is a giveaway to, lazy people and blah, 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 then there's an I told you so quality to what happens when people, when those people are in power and shit happens and they can't do anything about it. It's sort of like, see, we're useless. You put us in charge and it's impossible, which is an odd platform to run on. It's like, this whole system sucks. Put me in charge of it is a really odd, put me in charge of it so I can show you how sucky it can be is an odd point of view.
That is true. He's like, it's so bad. And then now he literally is still talking about the Trump administration, but literally just go back. There's a video 2014 of Obama explaining how we're susceptible to pandemics and a plan, and then he dismantled the whole pandemic response team. And so, I mean, isn't this just like simple math? But do we really live in an America where with those stats you could, people could still think you're doing a good job? I think it's the pro wrestling of it. It's just the pageantry of Trump is extremely attractive.
It's just the appearances, and he's just like, everybody's an asshole, but he's our asshole, that kind of thing. Like, we'll just let him be our sort of bully, kick the people. Yeah, you can't overstate how much people hate the know-it-all, like, prissy, academic, elite MSNBC point of view. People hate it viscerally, and they will let their parents die to stick it to those people.
I mean, that's the most well put it is, right? It's that we can't. I almost think that I have this. I didn't even know it was a superpower, but I really am amazing, incredible, I'm tremendous. Right. But that I am happy to be proven wrong, right? Like I'm fine with it. I don't think Anthony King, a mutual friend of ours, had said this thing one time. He's like, "Oh, I have strong opinions held loosely," or something.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I was like, that stuck with me. So I was like, that's perfect. It's like, if I have a friend who I disagree with, I really like to get along with my friend. So if I see a moment where I can be like, you know what, he was right about that. He's a smart guy, and I can find a way to clear up our relationship, right? And be like, hey, you know what, you were right. I think we need to embrace being wrong more. It's okay to be wrong. I mean, not to mention we live in a society where if you slip up at all, you're fucked.
Yeah.
Right? You can't say anything wrong, you know?
Yeah, it's absurd. And the idea that like, yeah, back to the virus, like the virology of it all is I would love it if this thing already spread in an early wave through most of the country, and it turns out that most people, like over 20% of people, have had it, and that the death rate is actually like 0.3% or 0.03%, or you know, so that would be awesome. But like, if I said that online, and there's a little evidence for that, but not enough to say it. I don't say anything online, but like like that would be great, even though it would have retroactively made some of the lockdown stuff an overreaction, and then like I guess the other side would get to score a point on that. Wouldn't that be better if the disease wasn't as bad as we thought it would be? You know?
Yeah. Right. But it's weird because if the disease, there is a weird thing that we have to be honest about, which is if the disease turns out to be not as bad, blah blah blah, right?
Yeah.
Then now we live in such a divided country where it's somehow a Trump victory if it somehow turns out to be not as bad, when regardless of anything, this level of incompetence was inexcusable to be the leader of the free world.
Right. Yeah, and I'm actually very sympathetic to the arguments in the county in Northern California and some of the more rural parts of this country where it's like, we're not a dense urban environment. We do not need to be locked down in our houses. We can easily take care of ourselves and wear masks when necessary and kind of stay away from people. And they actually could do that. Right, and that would be fine. And actually, if there was a competent like FEMA, there was actually a competent federal plan, you would have different goals and different like milestones to hit, whether you were a dense urban environment like New York or Chicago, or if you were even a more spread out urban environment like Los Angeles. And then if you're in Kansas City, Missouri, you know, the rules would be different. And as much authority as you could would be pushed down state to state, with the feds being, you know, what did he say? I'm not a shipping clerk. With the feds being a clearinghouse for the equipment and protection gear that you need. But then pathetically on that side too is like, just wear the fucking masks. Like you could actually restart most of your economy and have a pretty normal day-to-day life if any time that you were going to encounter anybody else face to face within 6 feet of each other, you just wore a mask and were careful with your hand washing and stuff. So they could, in rural parts of this country, stop the spread, like get it under the whatever they call it, under the metric where one person is going to spread to one other person. So it's like on average, one person spreads it to fewer than one other person. I forget. But now it's like wearing a mask makes you a sissy, you know, like wearing a mask is like a liberal thing, and it really shouldn't be. It's that, like, if you want to take this sort of like personal responsibility, leave us alone, we'll figure it out in our own communities, reopen the economy how we can, and let the free market sort it out. I'm actually very sympathetic to that point of view, but like, wear the fucking mask. You can leave your house, just wear the mask when you're going to be talking to anybody else. But now it's like, that makes you liberal. It's like, Jesus Christ. You know?
I know.
But the moving goalpost kills me, because it's like, now we've got people on the left being like, we're going to stay locked down in our houses, having somebody deliver all our meals and Amazon. Just whoever will do that. The
it
other
magically
people.
appears. It's not. There's no human, right?
Yeah. We're going to have those. We're just going to live like that in our little house and sip our coffee and like complain online about how everybody else is doing it wrong. You know, the fucking, you know, like the like aristocrat, like nobles, you know, like feudal lords. And then on the other side, we've got these shit kickers in the middle, like the rural states, being like, fuck it, let it ride. Like we're gonna reopen and do it all.
Why is it and like literally like coughing on liberals? Like, like that's during a pandemic.
Yeah,
you know, like
give me a break.
we have a state of emergency. But I
Yeah.
do think, I really believe this all comes down to leadership. It comes down, the buck stops at Trump. The fact that, look, for me, I really like, I'm always trying to be a better person and whatnot and blah, blah, blah. But like, one thing that like, since I'm a little kid that you've been taught, that you would probably teach your son now, right? When he spills a cup of water or something, all right? Is taking responsibility, right?
Yeah.
And like to see a 75-year-old man, I think about my little nephews who see a 75-year-old man, right? Who literally goes like, no, I don't take any responsibility, but it's his job, right?
Yeah.
Like how many times do you, in my life, I've been fired for things I didn't do. You know what I mean? Like I've had times where it's like, hey, that technically is under your umbrella. Greg was supposed to do that shit, right? But then Greg, Greg had one late night, and then I didn't check in with Greg, see if he did it, but blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So then I get in trouble for that.
Yeah.
We both get a sitting down, and then I never open my mouth to go, Greg was supposed to do that. No, you're the team. You're supposed to do it. This guy literally, he's been the president for 3 years and goes, Obama. And they started with an Obamagate. It's the most pathetic loser behavior I've ever seen. And you want to talk about being a man? He's talking about wearing a mask. I'm saying that if you want to be someone who subscribes to like classic gender roles, that's the least manly shit I've ever seen.
Yeah.
You know?
I won't do it. Yeah, I won't wear a mask. I'm too squeamish for it. Yeah.
Oh, all right. So Neil, you sent me this just to talk about just the actual COVID, right?
Yeah.
So the actual way we're treating this. So you sent me a graph, right?
Yeah.
That was how they beat COVID-19, and it basically shows that the U.S., the U.K., and Sweden are really the only places that are fucking this up. Right?
Yeah. There's absolutely no argument that we're doing a good job.
No, right. If you look at this graph, which I'll post on my Instagram at Dan Black Attack, and it literally just shows all these countries where there's a spike and then it goes down. Vietnam, South Korea, New Zealand, Thailand. New Zealand, they've said they have 0 cases.
Yeah,
last I
and
checked.
we're most like Australia. We could do it like Australia, which is like us, super spread out. People are pretty thorny about their sort of the freedom, that kind of stuff.
Right.
And you'd be harsher in the city, and you take a holistic approach to it. There's rural areas that need X, Y, and Z. There's cities that need A, B, and C. But yeah, you can do it.
Right.
We just didn't do it. I mean, we are going to beat it but we're going to let it ride a lot more than we needed to, and a lot more people are going to die than we needed it to, and it's going to last way longer than it needed to.
Would you say that we're going to beat it? We're going to beat it because we're lucky it's actually not as deadly as an Ebola or something, and then we'll eventually develop herd immunity, maybe before the vaccine even. No?
Maybe. This is where you start speculating, and like whatever whoever your favorite scientist is that week, then the echo chamber sort of takes it over and starts saying it like that's what they meant all along. Like, don't wear masks. They're for first responders. And if you don't go wear a mask, you should go to jail. It was like a week apart. But we don't know. And I don't know enough to look at like any raw, like I'm nothing. I'm a comedian. It is possible that we will, that as this spreads and we get better at treating it, we, in the areas that are most likely to have their hospital systems overwhelmed, we keep it from that, and we get better at treating it. Like whatever it is, 80%, 70% of people, 60% will have been exposed to it.
Right.
So then, it stops having the ability to ever hit those sort of exponential rises.
Absolutely. But you just hit on something I think is really interesting, because you said, oh, who am I? I'm just a comedian.
Yeah.
But that all comes back to this level of misinformation and distrust of media that comes out now, where a guy like Joe Rogan I have friends who Joe Rogan is like their main news source,
Hmm.
probably, or whatever, and I like Joe Rogan. I listen to Joe Rogan. I think he brings on some really smart people. I watch Bill Maher, like their shows I watch. I saw this guy, Dr. Katz. I've been reading his books, not the comedian Dr. Katz.
Hmm.
I'm reading one of his books now since seeing him because I was like, all right, you know what, this guy, you have to kind of choose who do you believe, who seems the most believable. And this guy was like, he had a rational approach to things. He brought up a point that was like, look, we're so divided right now, but the real reality of this thing is that everything's very lose-lose. It's not win-win. And like Trump's like, we're gonna win this way, liberals we're gonna hole up, and that's how we win. Where it is like, hey, our economy can't keep taking this kind of a beating,
Yeah.
and so we have to figure out some kind of way to open up and protect our vulnerable populations. Is that, will people still die? Yes, that's the lose element of the thing,
Yeah.
right? Will the economy suffer from losing people who have preconditions and whatnot? Like, that'll still hurt the economy, and we're going to lose industry because some industries will never come back, and places won't be as filled as they were before. So there's a lose element, but we have to actually realize, like, what's a practical way forward. And I was like, I'll read this guy because he has what I call, he South Parks it, where he's like, they're idiots on both sides, and here's the real, let's just talk rationally like humans.
Yeah. And the sad thing is, and I've said this a million times, but the sad thing is, in this country, no matter what you believe and what you want, you're going to get the stupidest fucking version of it that's just impossible to tolerate. You know,
Right.
you get the dumbest, but TV soundbite version of whatever you're actually arguing is what people hear. So just fuck it. You know, it's weird that it's always sad to me that people have given up on talking to people like adults, and that everything is PR essentially, and therefore when people who know what they're talking about come out and go, well, everything's a compromise, we're not really sure about this, we think this might be this, we could see, then everybody's sort of like, listen to that fucking loser, he doesn't know shit. Like, I'm going to listen to the people who come out with this sort of like furious certainty in their own correctness are easier to listen to because they can be digested in the way that you encounter them, whether it's on social media or TV or whatever. But I agree. Yeah, that's absolutely true. There's no, like, it's too late for us to have nipped this thing in the bud before it took off. We would have needed to be doing it in. Here's a argument people on the right will like. In Washington State, the FDA tried to stop that university from testing, and they broke the law by doing the testing anyway. So the federal bureaucracy was actively stopping testing from happening. So fuck them, right? But then on the other hand, like, now we need a massive national bureaucracy to roll out. So the worst of both worlds is to have a federal bureaucracy that stops people from doing things themselves, but then can't do shit when it's time to when we actually need them.
It literally, the polio vaccine guy, right, was testing on his family, right?
Right. Yeah,
like, he's not allowed to do that. And it's in Contagion. I hate to be like, this movie, which I learned the most about fucking pandemics from, is from this movie.
Yeah.
This kind of literally, the disease in this movie is from a bat. In China.
Yeah.
It's crazy. But
that's a pig to human in the movie, right? Yeah.
Yeah, pig, right. And so, what's her name? Which actress?
Gwyneth Paltrow?
No, maybe Rachel. I forget which actress, but whatever. It doesn't matter. I think maybe Rachel Weisz. I actually don't remember which actress it is. Doesn't matter. She starts injecting herself with the vaccine. She's like making it, and she's like, I don't have time for the FDA right now.
Yeah.
Like, where everybody's dying. I don't have time. I think she might have been in Europe, but like, I don't have time for government oversight. Government oversight, almost at some point, in some ways, is like, a luxury. But that's why you need federal leadership.
And that's why you need somebody who can override it. That's why we have a president. That's why we have people who can say, fuck it, we're doing it live.
Right. Yeah. Fuck it. We'll do it live. Because Trump was like, he was so hesitant to pull the trigger on the national, where you can tell GM what to produce.
The Defense Production Act.
Yeah. It's the Defense Production Act. And that feels like, I live in America. I'm like, I got 40 toothbrushes in my bathroom. We can't figure out how to make a N95 mask for every American.
Cuomo too. The fact that Cuomo was saying that too, it drove me crazy. The fact that in New York City, in the the like garment assembly floors, don't call them sweatshops, in the building below Champions on
Yeah. Oh, we
39th
used to
Street.
see it, man. We'd be in the elevator with those people. Their fingers were
Yeah.
bleeding.
Yeah, the fact that we got no ability to roll out like cloth masks with rubber bands on them is it really does. It's like an emperor has no clothes moment in terms of
Yeah.
their ability to make stuff in the country. It's really pathetic. But back to what you were saying before with that
Yeah.
guy, like, it's true. Like, once you accept that it's too late for us to have done it right, it's too late. The ship has sailed.
Right.
It's spread everywhere. Now you do need to like deal with realistic options that all have trade-offs. Absolutely.
Right.
And the fact that we're doing it kind of state by state and regional pacts and all that stuff, Nevada, California, Washington, Oregon, and did we let Arizona in? I forget. And then, the Northeast Pact is like that. They're stepping in where the federal government should be, and like creating these like side
Right.
side hustle organizations to deal with the pandemic. But yeah, it's absolutely absurd that people go, well, who cares about the economy? We have to just stay indoors until the virus is beat. That's stupid. And that was never what we were supposed to be doing. We were supposed to be staying indoors so that the
Flatten the
hospital
curve.
systems wouldn't be overwhelmed, so that the government could get ahead of it. The fact that the government didn't get ahead of it is their failing. Now you're saying everybody's got to stay indoors for X number of more months. It's just not
Right.
going to happen. It's not. People need to make a living. People need to have lives. People aren't going to do it. So you need to figure out a different way to do it. And social distancing, masks, opening up most businesses and stuff like that is probably the way to go.
Right.
That being said, you also can't just open it up with nothing, because it will. The hospital systems in areas of this country are going to get overwhelmed in short order. I don't know. How
Right.
fast, I don't know. But like the idea that we can just like shut down and stay shut down forever is absurd. It'll be a depression. It'll be a dust bowl. Like it's not possible. So, but arguing in either case, there is some evidence that basic social distancing and masks, it won't spread. It just won't, and that would be great. Like, that'd be a great thing. Can't we meet in the middle with that? Because it would be awesome if it's true. I mean, follow the evidence certainly, but there's some evidence that with masks and distancing, you can start up normal. Because I hate this chicken shit stuff too with California, where it's like, okay, we're opening the beaches, but no sitting.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Or like we're doing curbside, and like dog groomers are open, but like dog groomers are open, but barbershops aren't. It's like at a certain point you can't have like the little rules, and the little rule. It is going to be this chicken shit stuff where if somebody in the governor's office hasn't thought of a good reason why these places should open, then they're going to have to stay closed, and that's not okay. At a certain point, you just need to say, open up, have strong guidelines of what people can do in each other's faces, and not like how close you can get. But at a certain point, you have to let people take their own risks. Everybody knows this. Everybody knows about this at this point. You need to have strong general rules, and then let people sort it out amongst themselves. People are not going to go and sit at community tables in restaurants. People are not going to go to barbershops that don't seem to be taking this stuff seriously. At a certain point, the letting people make their own decisions is going to be the smarter way, with strong guidelines and enforcement of things like masks in crowds and maximum crowd size, just like you have with fire code. But like they don't, it's saying like dog groomers can open up but cat groomers can't is stupid, and has to just like chill out.
Right, and I think that's what people are. People are getting frustrated because they're trying to open their small businesses. Meanwhile, they're seeing Target able to sell whatever they want. There was some talk in the beginning. Target's only going to be able to sell food.
Yeah,
you go in there. I bought like 2 lamps since this went down.
But that's chicken shit too. I mean, that's like social engineering. Like, who cares? Like, once you're in the building, the damage is done. Let them sell whatever you want. Yeah, it's stupid. Like, Costco's got to rope off their pajamas. It's stupid. Like,
right. Well, and so I don't know exactly where we go from here, but we have to have some kind of plan. I just think the thing that kills me is that I've never ever gave a shit about the president in my life. Like, I've never I've never meaning like I never like looked at the president for any kind of leadership or anything, you know. And this is the first time in my life where I literally turn it on to be like, maybe Trump will say something good today. Like, even as dumb as this guy is, I'm like, maybe like you know, you turn it on because you're like, this is the guy. But then every time you turn on the news, you're like, I see what's her name, Kayleigh McEnary or whatever is like the whatever the you know the I forgot what that role's called, whatever, the speaker of the House
Oh,
Speaker,
the press
not the
secretary.
press secretary. Yes, thank you.
Oh,
And I'm like,
the new press secretary. Yeah.
I'm like, oh, her? You mean that pundit from that I watched forever on like CNN just defend anything Trump would say when he was running to be president?
Yeah.
Like, we would watch her and she would defend, like, grab him by the pussy, like all the stuff. Like, just go up there, man, it's fine. Like, it's all, and you're like, oh, they're all in the pocket. These are not people to get news from. These are people whose livelihoods depend on them having allegiance and gambling which way they're gonna go. And yeah, you're like, man, who could trust any of these people? Why? It's just a bummer we can't just hear from the smartest person in the room. Anyway,
Yeah, it's all PR, and that's the sad thing too, is the smartest person in the room's their point of view is going to have all these caveats and trade-offs, like you're
right,
saying, like, well, there's this, but this could go wrong this
right,
way, and there's this, but this could go like there's a chance we're completely fucked if we do it like this, but it might be worth a shot, and it's like only in retrospect are you going to know, but then nobody wants to hear that. Like, people
right.
have no patience for that stuff.
Well, no,
Everybody
and
just wants to hear a
right,
black and white argument, and usually about it being the other person being an asshole. It's like that's what people
right.
want to hear, is not just like that person's wrong. It's sort of like, fuck them, they're an asshole, don't listen to them, they're an idiot, you know.
Yeah,
And listen to me, I'm smart, fuck them. It's like the most compelling argument most of the time. It's pathetic.
I know. It's all, you know. It's just you know. It's a mess. All right. So look, we could talk about this forever. I wanna move on to another area. So I feel like you've always been wary of, like, for example, I I mentioned 23andMe to you one time, and you were like, don't do 23andMe,
Yeah.
right? And in my family, somebody did 23andMe for my mom or whatever, and
Yeah.
whatever. That's another story for another time. But you know, gave us a lot of information.
Yeah.
And
Gave them
like,
a lot of information.
a shit ton of information. You're like, where does that go? Then, and I'm saying, now that we're holed up and we're going to be more distant than ever, and we're all relying more on technology, I think it's
Yeah.
really interesting. You hear like TikTok blowing up, and then there was a report that TikTok was a Chinese spyware, right?
Yeah, TikTok is a Chinese company, and their peer the TikTok's app is not quite as bad as Facebook, but it's a pretty intrusive app on your phone, and all that information is going to a Chinese company that is in bed with the government and their intelligence services over there. So yeah,
Right.
you don't know what you're sharing.
I'm saying, like, in your mind, and I feel like you kind of shy away from social media. And what like, how dangerous is where we're headed in your mind in terms of this? Like, because as a comedian, right, I feel conflicted, and it makes me think of you, where I'm like, I guess I need a TikTok, right? Like, I'm like, I guess, and
Right.
then I'm like, well, you know that these companies, like, I rely extremely heavily on Facebook, you know,
Yeah.
for so much stuff I do for my pro wrestling podcast. Like, our whole group is on there. I have I'm really relying on them. It's very difficult for me to get off of it, you know, and it doesn't seem like we have any good, what's his name? Net neutrality was rolled back. It seems like it's a long partisan lines about how we policing the internet. Where, I don't know. I'm just picking your brain, kind of like, where do you think we go with here now that more of this stuff's going to be on there?
Yeah, it's really tough. I mean, I think as a comedian, like, I think that you really need to draw the line in your own life between what's public and what's private. You know, some people don't post pictures of their kids online. I don't care about that. I do. My wife, I don't, but my wife
Right.
will post pictures of her and him. Yeah, it's baby picture. Like, he's whatever. If he
Right.
wants them down someday, they'll be gone. It's tough. You know, insofar as like what you do online. Like if you did have a TikTok that was for your thing, I'd put it on a different phone. I'd use an old phone
Right.
that you don't carry around with you, and I would have your like social media enabled phone that you record stuff on. Maybe have your Facebook browser instead, have a browser that you use for when, in your day-to-day life,
Right.
How your web searches are ultimately kind of like your own train of thought. You might be searching for a song that you heard on the radio, and then you might be searching like WebMD for like symptoms that you're having because your leg hurts or something.
Yeah, right,
and
right.
you don't want to be giving everything away all the time. Is kind of a bad default setting for your computer use. So
Right.
So I think a good one is like, segregate it out a little bit. Like, don't be like the Facebook app on your phone is truly evil. If you're not aware of this, the Facebook app
Right.
tracks your location. It listens. It does like spyware stuff where it pings other devices on your Wi-Fi to see who else you're in the room with. It
Right.
checks your
Wow.
Bluetooth to see who else is around. Like, if you just sort of minimize your exposure to the truly worst actors and think for 1 second before you, I don't know, go live and start videoing around, for other people's privacy and for your own, you'll probably be better off than people who just have a default, like, same thing, let it ride approach of just,
Right.
fuck it, we'll do it, Like I
Right.
use, I use Safari on my Mac as my, like, most of the time browser.
Right.
And then for things like Facebook, things where, and that has like ad blocking and all that stuff kind of built in. And then when I need something that's essentially my, like, it's signed into my Google account browser, I have Chrome, which is signed into Facebook, Google, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So just generally, I'm in Safari with like basic protections for privacy and not tracking and all that stuff. So generally, and then I have Chrome for Amazon, Google, basically my, like, I'm walking down the street, look at what I'm doing browser. And that helps a little bit, but I'm not totally paranoid about it as much as I guess I would be if I were,
I'm not paranoid about it either. I'm just like, because I'm just like, I'm willing to put myself on the first line of fucked. Like, I'm just like, you know what? It is. I'm trying to be a public personality, and it just kind of like is what it is for me. Yeah. But I do think like I wouldn't have any of this shit if I didn't need to. Like, because I think, first off, I just think what it does to our brain. I mean, okay. Here's what I want to ask you before I forget. Okay. How this ties in is that, like, in terms of performance, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Does how do you feel about the natural state of comedy, right? Like, you and I just want to, like, we came up doing improv, right?
Yeah.
Very intimate thing, performing for small crowds, small packed in crowds in basements, right?
Yeah.
And that, and even our friends, they would do internet comedy, and they would have, it wasn't like we didn't have anything, but it was like the main thing, that the driving force was like, but we all meet on this stage, right? Like, this is kind of like where it happens. This is the center, the epicenter of the whole thing. We've already lost the New York UCB stage where you and I started, which was like the hub of maybe to reopen when the pandemic's over. And
live comedy, improv, sketch, stand up is going to be the last thing to come back, and it's really, really sad for anybody who's up and coming right now, because the tools necessary to be a YouTube personality, or to sort of say, I mean, in some ways it might be good. There's like a huge market of like what is going to replace it in people's headspace. But like, all these like Zoom, people who are just doing stand-up shows online, I mean, God bless them, do whatever you want. But like, when people are doing stand-up shows online and they have, Zoom stand-up shows, I've done some Zoom improv shows for fun, but like the format of YouTube comedy, people are already succeeding at that. So just because you're a good stand-up or a good improviser doesn't mean you can just come in and dabble in what is essentially a totally different medium. You know, there are people who have millions of subscribers who are YouTube comedians. Like Aquafina came up that way, right? Like it's a format. So the idea that you can just step off stage at UCB somewhere and just be like, I do YouTube comedy now, and just it looks bad. It's paced wrong. Like the whole thing, it's like you're just coming in, like you can. It's almost like you're a good improviser and you think you can walk on stage and just do stand up. And it's like, yeah, the tools that got you to be good on the improv stage are applicable to stand up, but it's a totally different format and a totally different medium that you should have respect for if you're going to try to do it for real. If you're just going in to do it for fun because we're all locked at home, then fine. But yeah, I've seen some of these like stand up shows over Zoom, and I've done that. You know, it's just. It doesn't hold a candle to people who really can do YouTube comedy. Now, that being said, I've worked with people, not naming any names, and some people with a lot of really good chops and stuff, but they just don't have the reps.
One name, please.
I've worked with people who've come out of YouTube and are doing like their first acting job or something like that. And a lot of them, they have chops. They're very funny, but they have no idea how to be on a set. They have no idea. They just don't have the reps for performing in front of camera with a lens pointed at you, being able to do it well 10 times, or just the attention span sometimes to do it. And again, you know, I used to take smoke breaks when I was on a show, the first show I was ever on during Adult Swim, and like the crew would like find me and be like, "You're on, man." I had no sense of how to be on a set. So everybody's a fool to an extent when you start, but certainly in terms of how to perform in front of camera, having years of reps on stage in front of a live audience, et cetera, is valuable, let's say.
Well,
when you're coming into a set.
It's a great point. It's so interesting because, well, first off, smoke break is so interesting because you and we'd perform a show, had like a 5-minute intermission, and we'd all go out back. I mean, I didn't smoke, but I come hang, go out back, take a smoke break, and they'd literally every single time be like, "Where the fuck are you guys? Like, what are you guys doing?
No, we're trying a cigarette."
They played the music already, and we just keep making that mistake every time.
Man,
it's so funny thing. But
I'm very happy I quit smoking. But it was cigarettes and, you know, dirty back hallway ashtrays was part of the comedy scene in the mid 2000s. So that's
I'm happy that I quit pizza, but having that mid ass cat pizza was always no, because I think what's so interesting about it is that, look, the world changes. You have to my uncle reminded me that Darwin was like it's they say like survival what am I thinking of?
Survival of the fittest?
Survival of the fittest, I'm sorry. Wow. I've been holed up. No, but you're saying like a survival of the fittest, but then you forget that actually sometimes the fittest are the people who adapt. It's not necessarily the strongest, right? So you're like, oh, adapting, and I've learned that behavior over time. So like now, I remember when I started podcasting, coming off from my like UCB background, being like a stage improviser and kind of let's put a quote unquote mastering that or whatever, getting very comfortable with that, and then I remember the first time I podcast being like, hello, how do I begin the thing? And and you're like, oh wow, it's a completely different skill, and that taught me you have to constantly adapt. But it's really interesting. I'm like, I don't think I would ever start doing comedy if in today's world. I mean, I love comedy so much, and maybe I would try, but I wouldn't stick it out as long if it was what it is now, where it's all kind of like chopped up. It's all going to be just chopped up, and it's like a 4-second sound bite. And it's not about necessarily the community, and
Yeah, and I the thing that really gets me is I can't do like the whole vibe of like selling yourself and having people have like access to you like you're their fucking friend is what drives me crazy. Is like I would I love performing, and I actually do like. I used to host ASCAT, and it's not that I'm so closed off I want to be private, but like the idea of like I've got to sell this sort of like sort of constructed public persona version of myself when I can like barely like I could barely sell like a public version of myself to like the deli guy at the grocery store. Like it's hard. Like I just kind of I like to act, I like to perform, I like to write, I like to, I like people to like the work held at arm's length to be enjoyed. I don't like this whole, the thing of like selling this sort of like projected that everybody has, they feel like they're your friend. So many podcasts are like people listening to people, like sitting around listening to friends talk, and then the listener is like this sort of like silent person sitting at the lunch table with them in high school. It's like, I don't like to feel that way, I like to,
See, I like that element of podcasts. Like, I like, I just kind of join in on the conversation. I like that with like my podcast. I feel like people are like, like they, and I'll interact with any listeners. I think it's fun. But
this is why you're good at it. Again, like, I'm not putting it down as a thing. It's not in my nature. So I'm a fun guest, but like, I couldn't do it. Like, I couldn't, like, I can't get, I'm glad you're great at it. That's why you're going to succeed. Just don't forget me from the when you're at the top of the mountain.
I'll never forget you. Never forget. You're the 9/11 of Friends. But I'll say that's the joke people keep coming back for. That's the zing. But I think I'm summing up. I'm not saying, like, obviously there's still until this pandemic hit, there's still a comedy community. I find there's more and more people who are just sign up for Instagram and go. Right?
Yeah.
They're like, just go with the comedy. And they have followings and whatnot. But I do find that for me, what attracted me about it was live performance, and like without that foundation, I worry we get to this next place. Now they're talking about you're gonna have comedy shows, like the Zoom comedy shows and stuff. You're like, oh man, it's just a lot of more editing and a lot of, it seems, it's just, I hope we get back on that stage soon.
Herd immunity or a vaccine. But like doing like UCB style improv it'll be like a lost art, like the Jedi. It'll be like what do you do in a scene? Like, I don't know. That was a long time ago.
Oh my God, it's so funny. Improv is gonna be like,
it'll be
what? I think about it like it's easy to get cynical about improv because who knows, team improvising, who knows where that'll go as time goes on and as the world changes and whatnot. But to be in New York at the time we were, I'm forever grateful to ever be a part of that. To be at this, at the center of like a movement. It's very awesome.
Yeah, nobody gets to be a part of anything cool. I was over in London at the Free Association Theater while I was shooting Avenue 5, and I was like living in London and just basically, I was very lonely and I was away from my family and just kind of living in a basement apartment and just like trying not to like gain weight or drink, it's like, don't drink too much and don't gain any weight. I mean, those two are related, but like, so my home away from home there was the FA, this theater there. And, I felt exactly the way, remember some of those guys from Chicago come swinging through town to UCB, where it's like, they kind of heard of me and they knew I was a teacher and all that. But like, it's like, they're good people, but they've got their own thing going on. They don't need to hear my war stories from, Second City main stage in 1999, because that's what it was, like good people, talented people, just all those guys who came through, they come do ASCAT and they're great, but it's like, they had their time of, performing at the same time as, Carell and Tina Fey and everybody else. And now they're coming into UCB and you got respect for them. You like them. They're good at what it is, but they're not part of your generation, Right. And I was definitely that over there. Like, I coached a couple teams and, played the role of statesman improviser, sat in on a couple shows and just straight manned them to death. But it was a really fun place. But what I'd say to those people over there is like, you're very, very lucky because it can only happen once, when the theater, when it gels and comes up, and anybody who at any point in their lives gets to be involved in anything actually cool for any period of time has hit the fucking jackpot, because there's not that many. It's not like cool things are by definition almost impossible. They never happen. So I'm very grateful for that too, to be around UCB from like 1999 until 2012, the way I was in New York. I'm very, very grateful for that. It's the odds that would work out are zero. So I'm very, very grateful that happened somehow.
Yeah, that we did like every Saturday and Sunday night, sold out crowds. in New York City in a basement of a Gristedes with a line all the way down the block where people are like, "What is that line?" You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah,
it's
to think, yeah,
it's
if just some pig had put its filthy snout in some bat shit in Wuhan in 2005, I wouldn't have had any of that good stuff happen to
absolutely.
me. Yeah.
Are we blaming the pigs now? Or the
I don't
pig?
know. Was it
Wow,
wasn't it a?
is it?
It's definitely an animal like that
No,
livestock
I
animal
know.
animal farm thing. I
Do
don't
you,
know.
all right. Here's the last thing I'm going to ask you, and then Neil, I'll let you go. But Neil, I'm going to ask you at points to come back because when I have questions along these lines,
Yeah.
you're going to be my guy. All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
When you're available, which right now you
I'm
seem
pretty available.
available.
Pretty available. Yeah.
Okay, I feel like there's a lot. We're in this like shame zone right now when it comes to Corona,
Yeah.
where there's it starts kind of like some mask shame. Like if you accidentally leave the house without the mask, you're like, oh fuck, I know I'm not gonna bump into anyone, but blah blah blah. And
Yeah.
then I feel like people are hanging out. People are hanging out. Some
Yeah.
people are hanging out. I've already caught people hanging out.
Yeah.
They're just not posting about it. They're pretending that they
Mhm.
were all holed up, but people are like already forming their bubbles, right?
Yeah.
Which is the term. So where are you at on hanging out with people? Like if I was like, Neil, come over. I got a porch here. It's outside. We sit. I'll set you. I'll Clorox down. Or actually, I'll put wipes on on the chair. So when you come, you do the wipes, and
Yeah.
then put the drinks out. Whatever. Are you at that place where you come hang? No, and I won't take it. I won't be offended.
Um. So here's one of these things where I'm totally open to being proven wrong. So I guess maybe I do need your listeners at this point. But
Right.
from what I'm seeing, my sense of things and
Yeah.
what's my sense count for? Absolutely fucking nothing. But
Yeah.
my sense of things right now, and I'm thinking about this a lot in terms of getting my son back in preschool and things like that.
Right.
My sense of things, seeing how it's spreading in the areas where they did open up, my sense of thing, and then seeing this vitamin D stuff, which is also very you saw that kind of bubble up is like as a possible explanation for why it's the morbidity of it in Los Angeles and out west as opposed to New York City in what was still kind of wintertime is so much lower, and also very sadly why it seems to disproportionately attack people with darker skin
Right.
and people with diabetes and obesity and stuff like that is the vitamin D issue. Is that possibly a compounding factor of this thing really attacking you and hurting you is
Shit,
vitamin D
go outside,
deficiency.
man.
Yeah, you do.
I do.
Is that read up on that because it's really, really interesting. But it's my sense, which again is worth jack shit and could change with any new evidence at the time. But my sense is right now that if you're wearing masks anytime you're within 6 feet of people, you're washing your hands and hand sanitizing when you can't wash hands, and you're not gathering in groups of greater than 10, and you're asymptomatic, so you're not coughing or spitting on fucking people, and you're just generally being careful, you're not going to get it from even if somebody else has it. If you and I are in a room together and you have it and I don't, and we both have masks if we're getting too close to each other, which of course then means we're just not getting too close to each other, and we're not doing anything stupid like coughing at each other, I'm not going to get it from you. Seems to me like I'm going to get it from you when we live together for days at a time and there's just no avoiding close contact from breath and coughs and stuff.
Right.
Because people, it seems like my sense is that the asymptomatic transmission does not happen through casual contact. Asymptomatic transmission happens among households and people who are in close physical contact with each other and have to be. So obviously it could happen accidentally with the grocery store. I've got dirty hands and I touched something, and but the evidence that it's, even this is on the CDC website today, that it's happening through surface contact and things like that seems pretty rare. So I could be convinced among people that I really believe are taking it seriously enough, I could be convinced at this point to come over and chill with you, especially on your porch, especially with open air and stuff like that, and get into with a group of 4, 6, or 10 people. Now, if everybody starts doing that all the time, and then everybody's meeting with different groups of up to 10 people, then the numbers are going to go up just because of those accidental transmissions, and the more rare ones, obviously, anything, no matter how rare something is, there is a
Right.
chance, and repeated enough times, it becomes inevitable.
Right.
But yeah, I'm pretty close to that, and I'm pretty close to sending my son back to preschool with uh, um, reasonable protections from with the teachers, and making sure the kids stay in small groups and stuff like that. I'm coming around.
Is the school open?
They will be. They're in negotiations about how to open, and we do the Zoom calls with all the parents, and some people are totally silent like me. Other people have, they have different priorities and different things. Like some things, like the mask things, is like,
Right.
do they wear masks? Does that matter? Like that
Right.
kind of, did the teachers wear masks all day? I don't
Aren't they
know.
going to touch their faces more? So, the funny thing is, I did a little bit of research on masks, and then I'm kind of like, they don't. From the WHO website and CDC, they're saying, they don't prevent you from inhaling the virus, right? That's what they're saying, but they
Yeah,
do
masks
prevent you.
prevent you from transmitting.
They prevent you from, if you cough, it'll catch
Yes.
something, right? So it's kind of
Right.
like that.
Yeah.
Uh,
And
uh,
just be
uh,
careful with the fucking coughs. I mean, that's a big part
right.
of it too. Is like the cough shaming I'm in favor of. People should
Yeah,
be
cough shaming, I
coughing.
think, is a real thing. Like that.
Yeah.
That's where I'm like, I was at the bank, and I'm walking towards like the ATM, right? And there's a guy walking back towards me, and our cars were parked in the same place, so we're going the opposite directions, right? He's walking towards me. He starts still walking towards me, but coughing. And so I
Yeah.
start backpedaling as fast
Yeah.
as I can,
Yeah.
and then until I hit a fence, and then he gets in his car, and I'm like, "Yo, what are you doing, man?" I literally called
Yeah.
him out because I was like, "You can't be coughing,
Yeah.
walking
Yeah.
with forward momentum."
Yeah. Stop it. Yeah. Absolutely.
And then he gave me the finger. He got in his car, drove off, and gave me the finger for treating him like he was infected. I was like, "I'm not trying
Yeah.
to treat you like infected. I'm just saying, just
Yeah.
if
Don't
you're gonna
cough at
cough,
people. If you gotta
stop."
cough, do it. Yeah. Do
Right.
whatever you gotta do. But like, yeah, you can't be doing that. Yeah. That's absolute bullshit.
Right.
Um,
Right.
So I'm in favor of that. But yeah, I'm coming around. I'm coming around on it. And that's what I mean in the Midwest. Like, open up, but open up smart. Retailers, wear masks when you have to be in close quarters with people. And then be careful with the touching. Be obsessive about the hand washing. But other than that, don't sweat it. You don't need to disinfect everything. You don't need to wipe everything down. I have no evidence that it's easily transmitted off of surfaces. We don't all need to go crazy. Like, I like that Bill Maher speech about the strength of the human immune system. You must have
Right.
seen that because you're watching him.
Yeah.
It's like, take care of yourself, stay healthy, get outside, get sunshine, eat cinnamon, take your vitamins,
Right.
and then just be careful. And
Yeah.
and if you're not forced into a dense urban environment where you're coming in shoulder contact, subway level contact with other people every fucking day, you're actually going to be fine. That seems to me where we're going. That seems to me where the conclusions of the people who I respect and who aren't reflexively and sort of propagandistically taking a better safe than sorry, like precautionary principle point of view on this,
Right.
where like the cover your ass principle of, well, any chance that you could get it from a toilet seat, we need new toilets. It's like,
Right.
it's that is probably not it. Same, my wife's always asking me, like, do you think people could get reinfected? Do you think that you can get reinfected with it after you go? Well, we don't have proof that you can't get it again. So
Right.
I guess we need to be open to that possibility. But if you could get reinfected and get it again, how could any of these countries have opened up? And
Right.
how could it be reopened in China? It seems to me most likely that you've got some immunity for at least a few months after you've had it. And that's like, Fauci will come out and say that. But then people are like, well, we don't really know until we know. People want a level of certainty that the science just can't provide.
Right.
But at the same time, the family of viruses that this is, the type of virus that it is, the type of symptoms it has, and then what we're seeing from people who've recovered from it seems like you probably have some degree of immunity after you've had it. So
Right.
it's probably safe to proceed with that assumption in mind, of course, being prepared to admit that you're criminally wrong if that turns out to be the case.
Right.
Just
But
probably won't.
but I guess what I always come back to is like, we live in this society of everyone just being like, see, they don't know shit, and then immediately to conspiracy, right?
Yeah.
Like, immediately, like, well, why did he say this and that? When a lot of times, if you hear the full sentences of these guys, they're saying, like, we don't know. Here's going to be our operating assumption because it's the best of our intelligence right now about something that's brand new, and
Yeah.
we're going to do our best. And then that's all. That's really at this point like all we can hope for, right? Is like, hey, let's just do what's the smartest with the amount of information that we
Yeah.
do have. But it becomes this blame game situation led by the top, where that trickles down, and now and is infectious and is created this rot among people where it's like,
Yeah.
hey, so yeah, if we get if so, for me it seems, and I know it's like it seems just so obvious who are the quote unquote good players of this situation. And it's not that they're all good. It's not that they don't have bad track records. It's like, is somebody operating with just like rational logic, you know?
You hope so, and when it's people on our side who do these sort of bad faith propaganda things that really undermine their credibility, and it drives me nuts.
Right.
Nothing actually makes me more upset than that. Like when the New York Times, when the people getting airtime on, like, you know, the liberal networks on MSNBC and
Right.
stuff like that. Remember that it's the masks thing, which I alluded to earlier. When people, like, the argument that people wanted to make was masks are really needed by healthcare workers. Healthcare workers
Right.
need the N95 masks, so don't hoard them, don't buy them up and do them.
Right.
And then that's what they mean to say is don't buy so many masks that people in hospitals don't get them.
Right.
But what they did say was this sort of bullshit argument, which is masks don't work, you don't need them. And it's like, but masks do work. And it's like, don't make your own masks because they're not that effective. But they're not effective at all. They're actually pretty effective, you know?
Right.
So when people on our side start to do, like, oversimplify to the point of absurdity, where they're actually not telling the truth because they're worried about the effect that what they're going to say is going to have out there. They're going meta, you know. They're worried that if they say masks are effective, that there's going to be a run on masks. So then they say masks aren't effective. Then you're playing into the hands of the people who are going to accuse you of being conspiratorial and you know, running some side operation. You know,
Right.
that lets people go like, see. And I see why they're doing it, because they don't want there to be a run on masks, but that's not really their role. You know,
Right.
their role, they have to be the lame asses. They have to be lame and be like, please don't go out and buy all the masks. Healthcare people need them, but masks will help with this. And
Right.
just let it shake out how they might. Let things shake out how they're going to shake out. But
the reality is, like, Neil, with the modern day politics, my argument is like you have to fight fire with fire. Like, at this point, it's like it might not be what we want, but it's like Nancy Pelosi coming out calling the president morbidly obese and
that is
saying,
politics, though. But everything's not politics. I'm fine
no,
with dirty politics, but when everything has to be filtered through this sort of partisan lens of polarized right and left politics in
it
this country,
sucks.
I give up.
I agree, it sucks.
Yeah.
Even the masks, it's like, so Trump says it's not like, you know, it's not a manly thing to do. What I don't even know if he even said it. It's just kind of implied. But and then you saw, like, our Eric Garcetti, our mayor, is like, real men wear masks, and we're like, even all that is like, it's all wrestling. It might be necessary. It's all pageantry. It's just sound bites and blah blah blah. It might be necessary, but it does suck for us who don't just get straight factual bullet points, which is all I want. It's like, how many tests do we need? I said it like, Shemi, let's just like, pandemics are not a new thing, right? How many tests do we need? Right? How many do we have now? How do we get there?
Yeah.
That's it. Like, why is that never the conversation? And it's Trump doesn't want to do it, but even that, it's just like, still, Anderson Cooper, the guy's got a bajillion hours of airtime. Like, let's say, somebody show me how we can make this many tests, right? I just want facts.
Talk to
right
people
now.
like
That's
adults.
all I want.
Yeah, you want there to be an uncompromised, some kind of uncompromised source of facts that talk to people like they're grown-ups. And you go to some of the international stuff, BBC, sure, you know, everybody's got their biases, everybody's, you know, full of shit on one issue or the other, but, like, you know, you want access to like sources of information that talk to you like you're an adult, not some goon cheering for their team. Yeah, wrestling is right.
Yeah, and so it's an we're I hope the fallout of this whole thing is like it's why you say why I would like Trump to not be the president anymore is because I would just like to get back to some sense of calm, but it's
Yeah.
not like that's going to be what happens.
Yeah.
So
If it
we
were a
have enough
Democrat in the office, they'd be screaming from the other side. Like they were
right,
screaming about
absolutely
10 people dying of SARS,
right.
what was it, however many from Ebola. I mean, it's like the bad faith arguments and the absolute, like the criminal bullshit of it is
Yeah,
exhausting.
and also before the coronavirus outbreak, they were giving Trump shit for shutting down travel to China.
Yeah.
Now, his travel ban didn't actually, it wasn't an actual ban. U.S. citizens and green card holders could still get in, so tons of people were getting back in. But it was kind of inarguably a good way to buy time, right? But
It was something.
it
Yeah,
made
it was something.
that even became a race issue, you know? So it's like that seems like so far back and whatnot. It's
Yeah,
not like
yeah. I
one
mean, I
side.
could. Oh, we find the bullshit on the other side, no problem. I mean,
Absolutely.
remember there was that New York Times op-ed that
Let
was
people
like,
know we're not like hard. I'm not like
yeah,
a hard left guy, no matter
yeah.
what. Like,
De Blasio's health commissioner was encouraging people to go to the Lunar New Year parade in Manhattan on like February 17th, and there were
right,
smart people already being like, "Don't do that." And
right,
they have that article in the New York Times where it was the guy who's sort of like, the real problem isn't the virus, the real problem is the stigma and racism that's going to be directed at Asian people. It's like, no, the real problem is the virus. I mean,
right.
I'm not in favor of people being rude to people of Asian descent. That's a really horrible thing, but like, don't discount the virus in favor of your sort of like, can't we be nicer to each other argument. That's ridiculous.
Right.
There is a virus. It's real. It's not Asian people's fault that there's the virus. And I'd be the first one to say, that stuff's abhorrent, but like, it's not one or the other. You can't be like, guys, when we're paying attention to this virus, aren't we really ignoring the racism of the people who are
No,
blaming Asian people for the virus? Like, no,
that's ridiculous. The
like,
same way it's ridiculous, but that like why when Trump calls it a Chinese virus, it's like you can argue that all right, he's just labeling where it came from, like all other viruses,
and
right?
people are taking the bait. It's such like
But
trolling. Like they're the Trump and company. They do the Chinese virus thing so that the pearl clutchers get on TV and go, "I can't believe he's doing that," and then that makes his base happy that he's
right.
being an asshole like they want him to be. It's just
But
like,
also the
don't
reason
take the bait.
right, and but my point is that like the reason that people react to Trump calling it a Chinese virus is because he has a pattern of racist behavior.
Yeah.
So when it comes from him, it feels more charged. Where someone else might be able to be like, "Yeah, I'm calling it the Wuhan virus because viruses are labeled from their origins, and that's how it helps
Ebola's
us
named
come up."
after the Ebola River. That's just
Right.
what it is. But
So
yeah, but
somebody
like,
get that. But we have a
yeah,
president who everything is just divisive conversation. Anyway, Neil, I think that's a place where we can wrap it up. We've talked
yeah.
our heads off. We've said a lot. We've said too much, as many people would say.
Let me give you one clap to sync our audio. You can cut this part out.
Okay, good. But well, I just wanted to thank you, Neil. I wanted to
Thank you, Dan.
you. Thank you for coming on. And I'm glad we had a nice conversation. I hope you guys gained something from this. I think we're in for quite a ride.
Yes, I think so too. And I look forward to seeing you on your porch sooner than is responsible.
Yeah.
Pour me some honey jack. We'll
Yeah.
have a couple laughs.
Well, Honey Jack Daniels, which by the way, I'm saying this now, and I just want to say this on the record. Honey Jack is it's my hydroxychloroquine. And so I'm 7-day cycle ran of Honey Jack Daniels. And listen, the results, many people are saying that Honey Jack Daniels
Mhm.
can prevent the
I'm taking it.
yeah, you're taking it?
I'm taking it. I'm taking the honey jack. Yeah.
Right now you're taking it?
Yeah.
Wow. All right, you heard it here second, everyone. So right now, run out to the stores. All your essential businesses, like the liquor store, is open.
Yeah.
Don't worry, and pick your guys up some Honey Jack. And Neil, thanks for popping on too. The
Thank you,
Bandwagon
Dan.
Attack. We'll
I'll
have you
talk to you
back
soon. Anytime.
All right, kisses.
Bye bye.